Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
So, Marky, let's just get right into this and start talking. The book is fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. Right now, we are a stone's throw away from where CBGB was. It's about 4 or 5 blocks away. I'm turned around right now, but east. When you are in this neighborhood, when you come back to this neighborhood, you've always lived in New York, but walking around these streets, do you get flashbacks to the 1970s when you grew up going to CBGBs?
Oh, yeah. Homeless people on the street, garbage strikes, rats running around. It's come a long way. New York was very downtrodden at the time. And our wonderful vice president at the time, Gerald Ford, told New York to go screw ourselves. And we needed money from Washington. And since I think because we were a Democratic state, he really didn't care. But anyway, we had CBGBs, that was our home. And we played there, and we honed our skills there, along with Blondie, Talking Heads. Well, I was with Richard Hell and the Voidoids at the time. And television, Patti Smith, etc. And the only changes that I see at this point is basically technology. Everyone has a cell phone. Back then, we had no form of communication. That's what happens when you eat pizza before you do an interview.
We just had a delicious pizza right back there. It was pretty amazing. So when you're a lifelong New Yorker, you grew up in Brooklyn. At a young age, why did you gravitate to playing the drums?
Well, my parents told me to come into the living room where the TV was, and the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, which was a very popular variety show. And I wanted to be Ringo. I was playing with all my army tanks and jeeps and my soldiers, and I threw them all away after that. And then I just wanted to be Ringo. So to me, he was very animated. I loved his drumming. They were a great band, still the greatest band of all time. And they were really one of the first bands who wrote their own music. And I was very impressed by the fact that all of them looked like a unit. And again, that's what inspired me to start playing the drums at a young age at 12 years old.
So you started playing drums at a young age, and then that led you to the CBGB scene. Reading the book, I forgot that you played drums in the Voidoids. I don't know if you guys know the Voidoids. They're one of the greatest, the greatest bands of all time. And on Blank Generation, we were just talking, that song has a very swing feel to it. And I'm curious the story behind your drumming technique in that song, and sort of, you have such an eclectic style. Who were the drummers that influenced you growing up, and how did it lead to that?
Well, I was very impressionable as a young kid. I liked all kinds of music. I wasn't stuck into just one genre. They called the Beatles and bands like that the British Invasion. But I also liked jazz. I loved Dave Brubeck, Take 5, that album. And I liked Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World, and of course, Hello, Dolly. So when I listened to Hello, Dolly, I liked the swing part of it, and I applied that towards the Blank Generation, which really is a jazz 4/4 swing beat. And that was the result, Blank Generation, which became a punk anthem. And that was recorded in '76, came out in '77. So I like all kinds of drummers. I liked Jimi Hendrix's drummer, Mitch Mitchell. I liked Buddy Rich, unbelievable. I liked Hal Blaine, Phil Spector's studio drummer from the Wrecking Crew. So there's a lot of drummers that I can mention, but it's such a long list. But I didn't just stick to listening to one genre. I love the blues, I love jazz, obviously I like punk, and I like a lot of, some of the metal, heavy metal stuff. The first band I was in was a heavy metal group. We were one of the first heavy metal bands in America. But if you close your ears to things, you're not going to learn. So I always try to learn from other drummers that I can incorporate into my own style.
You mentioned that you were in a heavy metal band. The band Marky's referring to is Dust. If you haven't heard the album Heart Attack, please go out and listen to Heart Attack. And I think we also just made punk history here, learning that Blank's generation was inspired. The beat came from Hello Dolly. I don't think I'd ever known.
Well, we're talking about the beat. The song was really about the times that was going on in New York City.
But the swing feel
what
came
I mentioned.
from Hello
Yeah,
Dolly.
the swing was from Louis Armstrong.
Now, so after your time in the Voidoids, you joined the Ramones. They reached out to you. In what ways did that change your life? You joining the band early on. What were the early days in the Ramones like, especially when Johnny came and asked you, right in the book?
Well, Tommy was in a band 3 years. He was there with them in the beginning, and all of a sudden he just wanted to leave and produce. So they used to see my band Dust play, and Tommy suggested I be in the band, and he told Dee Dee this, and I frequented the bar a lot at CBGB's, and that's where Dee Dee approached me and asked me if I would join the group. Then it was John, and then Joey came on board, and that's how I got to play with the Ramones. So the first song that I recorded with them was I Want to Be Sedated. So that was very simple.
So right out of the gates, I Want to Be Sedated. Amazing track.
Thank you.
First song you played on. I saw you play recently with Andrew WK and Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg. It's a fantastic show. The songs come one after the other. How many songs are in your set?
36.
36 songs, one after the other, barely a
Rapid fire
break.
succession.
When you play live, is there one Ramones song you look forward to playing the most when it comes up in the set list?
Oh, I like Rock and Roll High School. Fact that I was in the movie with the other three, and it was an experience I'll never forget making that movie. So every time I play that song, it just brings back those memories.
Now, you brought up the movie Rock and Roll High School. You were extremely funny in that movie. This is sort of a callback to the Beatles question. I always saw you were the Ramone that made me laugh the most.
I laughed too when I saw myself on the screen.
How would did you see yourself as the funny one in the group, and how do you sort of characterize the other one? Sort of in the same way that Paul was the cute one, George was the quiet one. How would you, if you could label their characteristics in one word?
Well, it's good to have somebody with a sense of humor around to break the tensions. Sometimes that erupted within the group. Like in any band or family, we were very close, and sometimes things happen that created tension and petty animosities. So being who I am, always wanting to have a laugh or laugh at something, I thought that would work. And most of the times it did, sometimes it didn't. So when you're traveling in a van for 5-6 hours a day for 15 years and doing 1,700 shows, there's bound to be something going on. So you try to think of things to make the other guys laugh and hopefully get along better. So I would come up with a lot of different things. They were basically natural.
One of those things, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but in the book you mentioned that you would often take dares to eat bugs, right?
I needed my protein. Anyway, we had bets. Can you eat the bugs off the windshield? And I said, yeah, okay, I will. Well, people eat bugs. You look at National Geographics. Anyway, I did, and I won the bets, and it made everyone laugh. So that was my intent, and along with the protein. Anyway, that was just one thing. And there's nothing funnier when there's silence and somebody makes a big fart. Now here we go, reverting to toilet humor. So that's what I did a lot. But it created a lot of laughs. So that was the extent of it. But I guess you could say I was the jovial, funny one.
Yeah, so legend had it that there was always tension in the band, so now we've learned how you broke up that tension from time to time. Was it difficult being a sociable guy in that band when there was so much tension?
Well, it was 90% fun and 10% everyday life. I mean, you know, you're with a bunch of people for that amount of time. There's going to be certain disagreements, whether it's over politics, sports, your loves and your hates of things that you don't like. So that erupted in the van a lot. But, you know, that's life. We were a family, we were brothers, and there was no escape because we were traveling in a van for 5-6 hours a day. We never used a tour bus because with any money that we did have left over, we would put back into the band to get more equipment or what have you. So that was the whole situation in that trusty Ford Econoline 15-passenger van with our assigned seats.
Where was your assigned seat in the van? Where were you?
Right behind our tour manager who was driving.
And how many years did you have that seat in the van?
15. 15 years. No, but we would rent one every 3 years, you know, once the warranty expired.
Now, one of the more inspiring parts of the book is when you write about your struggles with sobriety in the 80s, and it was really moving to read that. You took time away from the band to get clean. Was that a difficult chapter in your life to revisit when writing the book?
No, I don't have any more urges. I put that in the book to be very honest about my personality and what I went through. And I felt if it could help somebody, why not? You know, I don't care if anyone knew that I had a drinking problem. Now it's 2015. A lot of people are coming out of the closet about things that can help other people. So I don't care if it can. That's great. That if they read that and you know it can help them with their problem.
And also in writing the book, were there any misconceptions about the Ramones that you wanted to dispel? Anything you wanted to address particularly?
Yeah, we weren't real brothers.
How often does that get asked?
A lot. You know, a lot of people thought we were joined at the hip. Who knows? I don't know. There's this movie called Centipede. Did anybody see that? Well, we weren't Centipede, but anyway, no, we weren't brothers. So that was just you know, all rumor.
Another thing you touch upon in the book that's pretty amazing. You were underground rock heroes in America, but when you went to South America, that was a different story. Tell me a little bit about the difference between fans in the States and your fans south of the equator.
Well, yeah, that was about 20 years ago. Now it's a different story here. South America, 60,000 capacity stadiums. We were very grateful and amazed at the same time that that many people were there to see us. That didn't happen here, but we did grow in popularity in the last 15 years. Better late than never. Anyway, they would literally attack the van. You couldn't go out. If you ever saw Hard Day's Night, it was like that times 10. Obviously, with the Beatles, it was a movie set. But if they did walk out, I'm sure the same thing would have happened to them, obviously. But I guess it was the lyrical content, the energy that the band projected, that they saw something that they liked. It was Latin America, and maybe the last name Ramone had a lot to do with it. So they can, you know, feel that they were part of it, you know. But yeah, it was amazing over there.
Yeah, there's a video online taken from inside the Ramones tour van driving through streets in South America. If you ever want to have a panic attack, check out that video. It's people smashing themselves against the windows.
And we ran somebody over too, unfortunately. And I don't know what happened. You know, I hope he was okay. You know,
unsolved mystery.
You know, I hope there was air in the tires.
And the book sort of ends on a bittersweet note, and that your bandmates didn't get to see the love the Ramones feel now. Do you think that in their lifetime, you were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was an incredible moment? Do you think that they were aware of how beloved and how influential they were?
Oh, yeah, they saw it everywhere. I mean, they saw it in other bands covering the songs, Pearl Jam, Green Day, Rancid, Offspring, Even U2 cited us as an influence, and that's how they started their group, doing Ramones songs. So they were around long enough to see that. Unfortunately, they weren't around long enough to enjoy the fruits of their labor, but they did see all that, and I'm happy they did.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit how you are now playing with Andrew WK, as I mentioned before. Those shows are just a blast of energy. How did you meet Andrew and come up with this?
Andrew WK is great. He really knows how to engage an audience. I like his party philosophy. And he's very intelligent, very quick-witted, and I love his company. So we do 36 Ramones songs, and I didn't want a Joey clone in the group because no one could ever replace Joey. And he does it his way, and we continue to tour the world when we want to. And because there's a whole new generation out there that didn't really hear these songs because we retired in 1996. So along with the older generation and new generation, it bridges the generation gap, which is great. So I get a thrill, still get a thrill playing these songs.
Now, you mentioned Rock and Roll High School, and I love End of the Century. It's one of my favorite albums. I have to ask, in the book I learned that you and Phil Spector became buddies during the recording of that. I was always curious after reading, did the other bandmates become jealous that you were closer to Phil, or what was
I don't think so, no. Joey was close to him, but I remained friends with him. He loved Joey, he loved his singing, but when it came to me and Phil, it was more like buddy, Yeah. Unfortunately, he went away. But, we can't argue with the justice system of this country. I mean, we can, but, my opinion, I don't think there was enough evidence, but I'm not going to argue with the Los Angeles system there. First of all, they couldn't put away Robert Blake. They couldn't put away O.J. Simpson. So here you are, you have Phil Spector. Now, this is just an opinion. If he was let go, that would be 3 people. How would the people in Los Angeles feel with the judicial system? They would probably have lost faith in it. So I think in a lot of ways, he was used as an example. But he never pointed a gun at us in the studio. I don't know anything about anything that happened outside. But in the studio, he never pointed a gun. He had a license to carry. He did have guns on him, and he would take them off and put them down. They were heavy. He was a little guy. He's 5'5", I mean, you're not going to walk around with guns all day. He had to take them off sometime. And again, I like the guy a lot.
Now, I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions in a second, but I just want to ask, to people who are in punk bands today, the Ramones are so influential. What's some advice you would give to somebody who's young and watching this on the internet in a band today?
Be with musicians that have the same taste that you have. If you're going to form a group, definitely try to get along with each member. Rehearse a lot, and I know it sounds hard to do, but be original. Try to incorporate all your influences and then put the icing on the cake as your own style, and then you will come up with your own sound.
Some great advice. And now, can we open it up to the audience? Anyone has questions?
We have a mic if you want. Raise your hand. Ask a question.
Hello.
So let me repeat the question real quick. The question was about Marky's name, if he's legally a Ramone.
The last time I got arrested, let me see, no. No, my legal name is Mark Bell, a.k.a. Marky Ramone. When it comes to contracts and my rights, my image, it's Marky Ramone that I own. So that's it,
And I was always amazed you didn't have to change your appearance at all. You looked like a Ramone before you were Ramone. You matched the other guys perfectly. Nothing.
Well, I went to Brooklyn, Erasmus, And what happened in Erasmus is you remember Happy Days with Fonzie? Well, that's how people dressed. So that I was always into the jeans, leather jacket, and sneakers. And the glam scene was around from the New York Dolls, 70 to 73. So a lot of guys were wearing glam stuff, but I really wasn't into that. I was very grateful that the punk scene came along so I could wear my leather jacket.
You fit right in. I have a question in the back row.
Yeah, hey, Marky. Gene Simmons from Kiss recently made a comment saying that rock is dead now, and I was wondering what your honest opinion is about that.
Well, I have a radio show on Sirius XM, and rock definitely isn't dead. It goes out to 50 states, and I hear all these new bands. And if you keep your ears open, you'll hear them. I get to hear all the new groups, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. And you know what it is? Things have gotten so diluted and categorized that it's not rock anymore. It's punk rock. It's heavy metal. It's jazz fusion. It's blues rock. So just the term rock, is really a category? Things have to be categorized. But if that's Gene Simmons' opinion, he's entitled to it,
Another question right here.
Hi, Marky. Just have a quick question. I know that you were obviously close to all your band members who are no longer here, and some suffered from cancer and DD.
3 of them,
Which
yeah.
one could you say set you back the most? That was just curious if you can
What do you
answer
mean,
that.
deaths?
Took you back, took you the hardest.
All of them. I mean, I don't, I can't, I'm not going to compare each one's death. Death is a horrible thing no matter how you go. So it was all equal. They were like brothers. I can't measure anyone's death and feelings because of that reason. 3 of them succumbed to cancer. 1 died of an overdose. So, and Tommy just passed away of cancer. So it's horrible. I mean, you'll never get over it. You try to think of the good times you had, and hopefully, eventually, there'll be cures for all this stuff. But their legend lives on. The music lives on. Videos. So that to me, they're still alive.
Now, after the Ramones broke up or stopped playing after that Lollapalooza tour in '96, you continued to play with the Ramones separately, right? What were some of the projects you worked on?
Oh yeah.
Joey's solo album? And
Yeah, Joey's solo album. He was alive to see that happen. He always wanted to do a solo album, and we did What a Wonderful World, Ramones style, and because we loved Louis Armstrong's version, which I told you earlier, where I got the idea to play Blank Generation's beat. But he was able to have that dream come true, and we did the album, and while we were doing the album, he was still in the hospital, coming in and out. So he was that determined. So luckily, he saw that happen, and I was very happy for him, that he saw that.
Any more questions? Back corner.
Hey, so I'm totally geeking out from Forest Hills, born and raised, and I'm just like, Ramones. Yeah. When you were struggling, when you were, thank you for the advice, by the way, but when you were struggling when you were younger, what kept you going? What, if you were ever realized that you just wanted to give up, what really pushed you?
Well, I was very determined. I practiced a lot. When I went to high school, it was a different time. A lot of teachers didn't like what I was doing. They didn't like the way I looked. They didn't like the fact that I wanted to be in a band. There were a lot of obstacles. You really have to believe in yourself. At least I did, because there were a lot of deterrents, and I had to struggle. I mean, I took my drums on the train. A lot of the times, there were people coming up to the drums taking them. And I would get into fights and stuff, take the drums on a dolly through the streets of Brooklyn. And eventually, of course, you had your roadies, your tour managers, etc. But I was very determined to do what I wanted to do, and through hard work. And I think that's what did it, the hard work. You know, I didn't turn my back on it.
You mentioned Deterrence in the book. When I walked out on Broadway earlier, I saw probably a 12-year-old kid with green hair. That wasn't the case back then. You couldn't get away with that when you're starting out. You talk in the book that people didn't like long hair kids, but your dad and your parents stood up for you. Talk about your...
What's important is to have parents who are supportive. Okay, I played the drums. I drove my parents crazy. But anyway, they saw something in me that they noticed that could turn into something good. So they stuck by me, and I'm very grateful to them. But in the late 60s, 70s, the term hippie was a description of people who wanted to be individuals instead of looking in the norm, like the norm. So you would get a lot of harassment from definitely the gym teachers, the deans, but it was different times. A lot of the deans and gym teachers were really in the Korean War. A lot of them were sergeants, military people, and I have nothing against the military, but they were very abusive to me and people like me at that time, and it didn't help me through school. So, but it helped me do what I do now a lot better, because I knew that was the only thing that was going to get me through all that. Education is important, especially now with all the new technology. Back then, you really didn't need a college diploma to achieve anything. A high school diploma really was okay. But now you have to go through college because the world is changing so quick with the technology, and everyone has to keep up. But back then, there were a lot of teachers who were very abusive, verbally and physically. I was slapped around a lot in school. My father had to come up and warn these teachers not to touch me again. So there was a lot of things like that going on, and I had to deal with it,
Any more questions from the audience?
Time for one more question. Make it a good one.
One more.
Pressure's on. We got right back here.
Hi. You mentioned earlier briefly just how much New York has changed in the past few decades. I was wondering if, on balance, do you think that change has been for the better or for the worse? And I'm also wondering, is there anything you miss about old New York as you're walking around now?
Well, the populace has grown. People need places to live, so you have to make new buildings. Obviously, they're not going to look like, how do you say, something from the early 1900s. They just put them up in 2 months, you know what I mean? But does it hide what New York represented or was? Yeah, a little bit. Can you argue with the way the city has progressed in that respect? No, people have to live somewhere. Talking about restaurant chains, we live in a capitalistic society, and you have Starbucks now, you have the Gap, you have Banana Republic, you have all these, you have McDonald's, you have the Burger Kings. How can anybody really stop that? That's really the difference. Those things were hardly around back then in the 70s. I mean, they were there, but not as a large scale as they are now. But the changes I just don't want the Empire State Building to be hidden. That I don't want, because once you can't see the Empire State Building anymore, that's when I think I'm going to move out of New York City.
There's a gentleman in the Yankees hat. You had one question?
I'm from Flatbush.
All right.
I went to Erasmus Hall High School. Instead of going during the day, I went to summer school and night school. So I really graduated in 6 months. But but I did. But when I went during the day, that's when it turned me off the most, because that's where the abusive teachers were. The people who taught me in night school and summer school had sympathy for me. Anyway, that was it.
Well, Marky, you're a New York legend, a punk rock legend.
Thank you.
So on behalf of AOL Build, thank you very much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
And I want to give a shout out to Johnny, Joey, Dee Dee, and Tommy.